you're not amped and excited to get up to work every day and be pushing for more and be pushing to grow, then you're probably going to start to see the curve of your business go from a nice trajectory to
that's right,
to the downward.
And I like what you said earlier about that. Like, it's okay. If you're done, if you don't have the flame, it's okay. Go find something that you're going to be excited about. Life's too short. All right. Well, welcome to the Restaurantology podcast.
Glad to be here.
Glad that you're here, Rob. One of my favorite restaurants on the planet, Mo Bettahs. And it's interesting because with Hawaiian food, you have to think that when people say Hawaiian food, and they kind of get like this mysterious face if they've never eaten at a place like that, because if you've never eaten there, you think in your mind, is that like poke? Is it fish? Is it because you think about the islands, right?
Yep.
What is Hawaiian food, just for the audience, so that everybody understands what Mo Bettahs Hawaiian food is?
Well, the best part is it's food everybody eats. At the end of the day, we serve chicken, steak, rice. We throw in some pulled pork and macaroni salad.
Yeah, who the heck doesn't eat that, right?
And then we drizzle it all over with teriyaki sauce. But
who doesn't like teriyaki sauce? I mean, everybody likes that.
Well, and best part, we cook it on an open grill. So like this is stuff that you could literally, and it's stuff Mo and Culinary, our founders, grew up making in their backyards on top of a grill, just cooking for family and friends. So.
Which I really think that's the secret of the brand too. When you walk in and you see that fire and that flame going, and then you see them throwing on that different protein on that, you're like, woo, this is like fresh right in front of my face. A lot of restaurants you go into and they have all the food there and you're like, how long ago did you make that?
Yeah.
And is it really truly fresh, or is it just warmed up?
Well,
right?
The secret marketing trick is, we see this with new store openings in particular, we're pumping out all this delicious, flavorful smells into the neighborhoods out of our hoods. And so we've had people literally, I had a guy actually, we opened up one of our Vegas stores. He's like, I was sitting in the Del Taco drive-thru and I just smelled something fantastic and I had to come down and see what it was. I was like, well, best part is the plate's on us today, but we're glad you made the drive down to check us out. So.
Del Taco's not very happy with us. They're like,
no, they probably weren't happy about that, but we'll let the smells talk for themselves.
Well, I appreciate you coming today. One of the best leaders that I think that I've seen in the last 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. We've had a lot of leaders work for us with different brands at Savory, and I've worked with a lot of different executives and leaders. But I would say that you're one of the top that I've ever seen. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today is, there's a very big vacuum or a void of good leadership. I think in any business, in any segment, but it truly in the food and beverage industry. And I think it's because it's multifaceted. There's a lot of stuff going on in food and beverage, especially with a growing empire like you're growing with Mo Bettahs. And so I wanted to extract as much as I could from you today to help those that are listening too, that are struggling with, not only growing, but also having good leadership in place. And so I know that you're probably still going to say, well, I'm still learning, because that's just how you are.
Well, I was going to say, I appreciate the compliment, but you guys set me up from the start, because we've got some great leaders in John Conine, our head of ops, and of course, Mo and Kalani's leadership, and Tammy. And, I don't get to do what I do without an amazing team. And I've been very fortunate. We have such a great brand, as we were talking about, to attract some awesome humans that have come and they make my job easy. So I don't know if it's that I'm a good leader or if I've just been fortunate enough to bring some good people in that make it easy for me.
Yeah, you probably just ride coattails really well. That's what you're saying.
That's
what you're saying.
It.
Yeah, I don't know if that's 100% true, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. So before we jump into Mo Bettahs and just leading the Mo Bettahs empire, because that thing really is humming along. Let's talk about your background so people understand, well, I've done all of these things. I got to this point and now it's kind of my time to really be the true leader.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your background too, so people understand, because you've had a long time in the food and beverage industry.
I've been doing this a while. In fact, it scares me. I pretty soon I'm going to say I've been in this for 30 years, but for now it's still still just over 25. But I started out just working in a pizza shop in Bountiful, Utah, many moons ago. My family didn't have a lot of money, and if I wanted anything besides a bed to sleep on and food and general clothes, like, buying shoes like this, I had to earn the money. So, really just worked my way up. Most of my career has been in operations. So was at that pizza place for a number of years, became the GM there, decided to go to school and got a degree, funny enough, in chemistry and physics.
Oh, that makes sense.
I don't know, realized very quickly sitting in a lab and being a chemist was not for me, but was able to pick up a lot of math and problem solving skills from that I would say I carry to this day. But really just started there and kind of grew up, assistant GM, DM, went into training for a while, spent 2.5 years of probably the most growth in my career in finance, which was weird to say finance from ops, but also learned very quickly I love people and finance wasn't the place for me to really grow leaders. And so anyhow, from there really grew into the regional side. And so I was at Einstein Brothers Bagels and Noah's Bagels for a number of years, ran the Western US for them, ran the central region for them, and decided to change my pace a little bit and went out to coffee and was with Pete's Coffee for a number of years, leading their company operations. And then was with Phil's Coffee as the COO before, during this little pandemic that happened, deciding that it was time for a change of pace from the Bay Area, and came back out here to Utah. And lucky enough to come join
Full Circle.
Mo Bettahs.
Full circle.
Yeah.
So when you were called about Mo Bettahs initially, what was your initial response to Mo Bettahs, to Hawaiian food? Did you have some tie to Hawaii or that type of food or that culture? Is that what kind of got you interested?
I really didn't. I honestly, when I got that call, was like, well, let me go check this place out. Like the person who called me sounded pretty excited about it. I'm like, I just moved back to Utah. I don't really even know what Mo Bettahs is, but I'll go look. And boy, the minute I walked into the door to our Ogden location was the first store I walked into.
Okay.
Like it hit me because I was like, okay, like this is kind of a cool vibe. The music was playing, and we have these sheds that we have in the restaurants. I'm like, well, this is kind of interesting to have this structure inside. And but then I tasted the food on top of that and was like, oh, this is Hawaiian food. To your point, being in California, the Hawaiian style restaurants they had out there, a lot of poke, gigantic menus.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, this chicken's really dang good. The pork was really good. Rice and everything else. And then once I tried the food, I was hooked. So then I visited several locations across the Wasatch Front and knew, okay, this was a neat brand that I wanted to engage with. But then even better than that, when I got to meet the people, not only the Mo Bettahs folks, I mentioned John Conine, our founders, Kimo and Kalani, but then when I got to meet Savory, I was like, okay, this is a cool group of humans that not only have an awesome concept here that I can get behind and wake up every morning and be proud of, but there's some awesome people here that I can engage with and learn from.
I would agree. There's awesome people around the table, and same thing for us. I mean, we loved when we met Kimo and Kalani and hearing their story, and the joy that I have in the position that I have is hearing the stories of the founding of companies. I've been a founder of companies for my whole life.
Yeah.
And so to hear other people's founding of their company or their idea and seeing it come to, the point where it is when we get involved, it's really fun to see that and hear that. And then to take them from where we got them, which we invested in Kimo and Kalani at 6 units. And then when you came, we had 22 units or 22 units. And we just opened up store.
We're at 52. We'll be at 53 in 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 53. We're going to say 53 then.
Might as well just say 53. Yeah, I don't know when this will come out.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally.
So 53 stores, which is unbelievable, which less than 1% of brands in this industry will hit 50 stores.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that, but it's a small percentage. And so you hit this huge milestone with Mo Bettahs, which kudos to you and the team. What do you think took it from the 22 when you got here to the point where we got here today? Would you lean on, well, it was because of really good food and we had, a really good cult following of customers, or would you say that the great leaders got it from 22 to 53?
Well, I think it starts with a great brand, because I don't think you get great leaders without great quality food and things that we can wake up every morning. I mean, I woke up at 3:00 this morning just because I was excited about all the stuff I got to do today. And I think you got to have that passion that lies into it first. But then, after that, it is about the leaders. It's about the team. And we have a new store opening team that, we had the first few that we did that we were together for 23, 24, 25. There were some learnings there. But geez, they're on autopilot. Like I remember meeting with a few groups and them questioning how many stores we could open in a year. And them actually being like, oh, you can't do more than 10. I was like, no, actually our team
to do a lot more than
our team could do one a week if we need to, is the way it's built. And it's just having leaders like that are seamless, having leaders like our ops leadership team, like John, that just understands the business and can make it smooth. Like it all starts with that leadership and building the culture on top of that. Because again, the foundation of what we are is what brought people here. But we also know we have to hold on to that very carefully as we grow, because it's very easy to let that culture dilute as we get bigger and bigger. And I even think about it when I first joined at 22. I mean, I was in every one of our restaurants once a month, twice a month, maybe even up to 3 times a month. And I just can't physically get everywhere as often anymore. But that doesn't mean we we can lose that connection with the team. And so,
yeah, and let's dig into that then, because I remember when we were building out our bakery and cafe concept, when we were 10 units and we were all in the same region, we would get together more often. We would have more face-to-face events. We just had a relationship with the team. It was much easier, it was much more cohesive. Then we go to another state. We jump to Arizona, then we jump to the Midwest. It's hard as a leader to get out and have that same cohesion with the team. How have you done that with Mo Bettahs, and what are you doing to keep that same cohesion with the team going so that people feel like they're part of the mothership?
Yeah. So we have a couple of different touch points. First and foremost, again, we can't get everywhere all the time, but every single month we do a video call with, and it's got to be video. We want everybody's cameras on with everybody in the company. So whether you're in Dallas, Texas, or you're in Las Vegas, or, name all the cities we're in, you get to see people's faces and connect and engage. So it kind of starts there, and it's information share, but it's celebration, but it's using technology that we have today to do that initial connection.
Which who would have thunk that it's like Zoom and Teams and all that stuff would have been part of business? But it is. It's nice because you can see their face. It's different than a conference call, because it was always about conference calls before.
For sure. Well, I mean, I started long enough ago that we didn't even have email. It was voicemail systems. We had group voicemails is how we would do mass communication.
You would
and
send
faxes.
Send beeps to people.
Beeps.
Love you.
I was really tech savvy. I had a whole email e-fax thing that I could do with my restaurants. But yeah, I was really fancy. But it starts with the video calls, and that's one. The other thing we do still do, and you're right, we used to actually get all of our GMs together once a month, if you can believe it, when we were much, much smaller. But now we try to get everybody together at least twice a year in person. As we get bigger, that'll keep shifting. I mean, that's what we can do at 50, at 100. It's going to have to keep evolving, but we bring everybody together at least twice a year so they can get that human connection. So there's that kind of overall team building side. But then the other concerted focus for us is with our founders. Like, I love our founders. They're awesome.
So good.
And we love spending time with them. And so we actually just got back from a trip actually out into Kansas City where we took them around, and we'll do a dinner with kind of our key high potential folks. So we met up at Chicken and Pickle and hung out for a few hours, and they got to engage with the founders and engage with myself. I mean, the founders are cooler than I am, but engage with me and engage with other leaders for sure. But we do those as like connection points with our high potential leaders to make sure they're feeling the culture. And then we go visit the restaurants and we taste the food and we interact with the team. And it's very much let's get to know the humans that are in these buildings and let's find the ways to celebrate them. It is not sitting down and going through every restaurant and doing a business. We got plenty of time to do business reviews and check financials and that, but those connections are about them understanding the brand and who we are. And so those touch points are pretty big. And then it all funnels through the rest of our leadership as well. We've got weekly cadence of meetings with district managers and connecting with them, or even just yesterday, we try to do a lot of leadership things around, we'll read books together. And so one of the books our teams are reading right now is called Crucial Conversations. And basically every district in the company is doing that. So I hopped on a call yesterday with a district, and I'm sure they would have loved for me to shut up because I have a hard time not giving my 2 cents when we're talking about leadership principles. But, it was a team's call, and we hopped on and had video and engaged around some leadership principles. So
amazing.
There's a lot of things there, but it's finding these ways to connect with facial expressions, not just video, not just email, and build the brand that way.
So 2 things you said that I wanted to go back to. So one, founder and or founders, if there's multiple founders, it's really important to have them still be a part of that culture around kind of the leadership, the growth of the leadership team. I think that they're kind of the glue of the brand, if you ask me. But you have to use them the right way. I think that founders a lot of times want to be in the middle of everything, and they want to run it, and they want to be the lead. And what I have found, even with myself, is that I can't be involved in everything. I'm not going to be the best use in the middle of everything. So let people that are better than me run those parts, but then I'm going to still be the glue, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you've done a really good job of that with Kimo and Kalani. With Kimo and Kalani, they're so good about coming in and having people understand why we're here, what we're doing, what the purpose is. And their purpose is not just about money. It's not about growing their brand. It's actually none of that.
Yeah.
I think that's number 7 on their list. It's really about building this culture where people want to work and then getting behind you. So I think you've done a good job at pulling them in so people know them, but not having them be the tip of the spear, because you've really done a good job at being the tip of the spear. And I know that they get behind you as well. The second thing is I've seen a lot of groups out there, they say, well, we read books, because you just said that too. But then you said we read books and we get together and we talk about them, and then we talk about those principles we're learning and then how we actually implement them into our business. Reading a book and you telling everybody read this book.
Yeah.
It's not going to help, right? Like you have to really pull pieces out and then tell them how to implement it and then probably circle back around. Is that how you do it?
It's a discussion starter. It can't be like, great, we all read, these 10 books this year. It's like, no, it starts a discussion. And quite frankly, depending on what's going on in this store or this district or whatever it is, the learnings from that book are going to be different. And to go back to what you touched on with Mo and Culinary, I mean, where I said you guys set me up well. I mean, these are some of the best founders I've ever worked with. And what's beautiful about it is they love to invest in the culture and go out and meet with our teams. But then for me, they get to be that sounding board to say, hey, we've got this idea. We think we want to do this with the brand. Is it on brand or not? And so they play that role very well. And then for me also personally, I can go and bounce other more difficult business ideas off of them and get their coaching and their counsel, but they're great about not stepping in and trying to, for lack of a better term, get in the way of progress because, they just want to control it all. And so it's a fine balance that we've found, and we have a heck of a lot of fun doing it too.
Yeah, you found a great balance. Tell me why John Conine and others in the brand have remained so long. Do you think? I mean, we all would want to have our best people stay forever, right? Yep. He's been with the brand for...
He's 13 years.
13 years.
Started out frontline employee doing prep and washing dishes and everything else.
That's crazy.
And it starts with the food quality. It starts with Mo and Culinary and the culture that they've had. But the other big piece and what's exciting, I think, about a growing brand is there's growth opportunities for those that are willing to reach out and grab it. And John's one of those guys that has taken advantage of every opportunity presented to him. And I think not to put words in his mouth, but I think he sees like, hey, as far as I want to take my career, it's possible here at Mo Bettahs.
Yeah.
As long as he keeps grabbing it. We talk about development all the time, or I do at least, about it being like a marathon. You're running a marathon. Our job is to train folks and set up water stations, make sure they have the right outfit and the right shoes, and they know where the start line and the finish line is, but we can't run the race for them. And I think folks, unlike John, sometimes think that we're going to tie a rope around their waist and drag them down the track. It's like, no, that's actually for you to run the race. We just need to do our part to set you up for success.
That is a great analogy, because I feel like a lot of leaders, they jump to other things in their career, chasing the opportunity that's just going to be laid in their lap, right? More money, more responsibility, more title, more power. And I love how you say, we're going to put it out there. You just have to grab it, because it's something that you have to reach out for and you have to do. And a lot of times you have to actually perform that duty or show that you can do it before you get it. Is that how you feel?
Totally how I feel. And it's, probably a blessing and a curse for the team of, I worked my way up through this business. I think sometimes people think like, oh, you're the CEO. Somebody had a lot of money and position, just placed you in that position. It's like, well, I wish I could say that. That might've been the easier path. But for myself, I've worked my way up, but I've also had a lot of amazing mentors that have helped me along the way. And so it's this nice balance of saying, hey, anybody can do what I've done, and I want to help people get there. That's actually the pay it forward piece that John and I actually talk about often. We want to pay that forward for our teams, but there's also a level of effort on my part that I put in and his part that he puts in, and that we want to see from folks who want to do that as well.
So let's talk about hyper growth and then the culture that we just talked about. When you go through a lot of growth, so there's years that you kind of pause and perfect. I think there's years that you slow it down a little bit, make sure everything's running well before you add more. So you lace in more fuel into the tank so that you go faster. I always like that analogy.
Yep.
And with Mo Bettahs, there's been times where we've slowed down a little bit, but it's really been just kind of fast, right? Yeah. Do you feel like culture is harder when you're going faster? And if you're going fast, are the tactics that you're using right now, pulling everybody together so you can see them face to face, does that work in hypergrowth too? Or do you change anything in hypergrowth versus if you're just adding a few a year?
I think it becomes more important in hypergrowth. I think having those key touch points, and I know I blurted out a lot of various things, but there's a rhythm and a cadence to how we have meetings, how we conduct these things to make sure that they happen. And they need to happen more frequently, because I would say what happens as we go through hypergrowth is we have to even hold firmer to our culture and who we are. Because one of the things we've learned is that, and we have a lot of amazing humans that have worked for the brand, but they might have been perfectly placed and well fit at 22 locations, and they're just not at 50. And that's okay.
It's okay.
They need to find another place. But if we allow folks that are not ready for 50 to kind of hang around and we don't stay true to who we are, then that can be damaging in other ways. And we face that from time to time where you have some folks that have been around a while and they decide it's time to leave, and or maybe we have to help them decide it's time to leave, and they go, and you have other people kind of shocked, and it's like, well, like, it's okay for them. Like, that was the right move. It was good for them when it got to this place, and it's not good for them anymore. So let's let them go find the thing that's good for them now, and let's find the next player on the team that's going to help us in our next phase of growth. And if you're not careful, though, I think that poison can infect the organization. And that's where I think sometimes you hear companies say, we have to pause and perfect. It's like, really, actually, you need to probably clean your system out of the poison and then bring the people on that are excited to grow with you. And in fact, the model that we lean into very heavily on whoever's on the team is the ideal team player model, which is they got to be hungry. We're a growing company. If you're not hungry for growth and more, it's going to be a very uncomfortable place for you. Extremely uncomfortable.
It's not a complacent individual's environment, for sure.
Not at all.
Because things are changing all the time.
And you have to love that. In fact, we talk about embracing ambiguity. In fact, I learned that from Jacob Jaber from Phil's. I was having a conversation about a skill of dealing with ambiguity. He dead stopped me mid-sentence and said, we're a growth company. We don't deal with ambiguity. We embrace ambiguity. And I've carried that forward with the team.
Boy, that's a great statement. I love it. I've never even heard that one. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Everyone write that one down. That's a good one. Embrace it.
Embrace it. But then the other side of that too is, so you've got hunger. You got to have that. You've also got to be humble. Doesn't matter my title. I can learn from every single employee in our organization. And that goes for everyone on our leadership team, our DMs, our GMs. You've got to be humble enough to learn. You've got to be humble enough to know what your position and your authority is that you need to carry as a decision maker and as a leader, but you also have to be willing to talk to everybody. That's important for us as a team. And we've seen various iterations on that. And then you've got to be people smart. I actually like what you guys call it at Savory. Maybe I shouldn't let that out or say it this way, but the no asshole policy. Like, you've got to be good at how you interact with people and not be selfish and all those things. And so if somebody has those three things, they're going to grow well with us. If they're lacking in one of those areas, it's going to get uncomfortable as we grow.
Yeah, I think Shauna calls it the no a-hole policy.
Oh,
I call it no asshole. You call it no asshole. So yeah. Just so everybody knows, that's what it is when we say the no a-hole policy.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
No jackasses, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, whatever. Life is too short to not enjoy the people you're doing business with, right?
100%.
And so I think that kind of dovetails into another question I have for you. As a leader, one of the hardest things to do is to call it on an individual, right? It's like, you know what? I've invested a ton into that person. That person is given it their best.
Yep.
It's just not working. Or that person's toxic. You said poison. I call it the black plague in our business. When you have something like that, the toxicity in the organization can overcome really good people, right? Yeah. And so you hear the statement always, hire slow, fire fast. When you're hyper growing, I feel like you're always hiring fast. Like, you're looking at people and you're going, you know what? You got good experience, hire them.
Yep.
But then I think that we tend to, in hypergrowth phase too, because I've done this, I'm admitting this. You're like, but I don't have enough people because we're growing fast. So then you keep bad players on your team.
Yeah.
How have you, with a high growing business, decided to fire fast? And when is it in your mind the time where you say, it's time, I got to fire that person? Because firing sucks. I'm not saying firing's ever good. And anybody that's listening to this, if you've ever been fired, it's the worst day of your life, I'm sure. But we have to, right? As leaders, that's part of the job. When do you decide it's time?
Yeah, I think it goes right back to that toxicity side. I think if it's time and I've got to do it fast, it's somebody who is doing something that's impacting or hurting our culture. They might be an amazing performer everywhere else, but if the negativity is impacting the culture, then we've got to take very, very swift action. I think on other folks, I think you always have to look inside first and say, have we set them up for success? Have we been clear with expectations? Have they gotten the right training? Have we done our part? And if they just can't get there, I think sometimes you have to step back and go, I'm not firing fast because I don't want to hurt this human, when the reality is actually I'm hurting them more by just keeping them around in a situation that they're not comfortable with. And so I think when you can accept that and go, I've done my part, it's now on them, toxicity aside, like, how do I help them actually get to the next best place for them? In fact, John and I talk about this, and I'll give he loves sports, and he talks about, you know what, this might be a person that's riding the bench here. They're not on the field. They're not actually out playing. They're kind of hanging back, and let's help them get to a place where they can be a starter versus somebody riding the bench. And so I think when you can accept that we're trying to help people, we're trying to help the business, but we're also trying to help them, At least maybe it's just what I tell myself to sleep at night, but I think it allows you to just mentally move faster because you realize you're not doing anything that's intended to be detrimental or negative to somebody. You're actually trying to help them out.
Yeah. And that's the problem. I think for me, it's so hard for me to see people. I'm like, I know they have the potential. I know they're better than that. And I want them to be great, right? As a leader, I want to make them great. But unless they're willing to run the race themselves, it's a futile exercise, right? And I think that's why I would probably say my partner, Shauna, would say you give too many chances to people. And I do. I think as a leader, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways from what you're saying too, is I have to call it earlier and I just have to be done because I try to make it work for people. It's really up to them.
And I think we all do that. I'm guilty of that too. That's where if they have a positive energy and they're contributing to the culture, that's where I probably let it go on a little too long. If there's negativity, and I think my team knows this because they hear it from me, then it's just time to move on.
That's a no-go.
That's a no-go. We gotta.
What are some examples of people where you're like, that's not going to get better. We have to be done with that person? Because I have an example that I'm going to give you of one of mine, and that is borrowing power. We always talk about that in our office, that borrowing power is an example of someone that's going to be toxic either now or in the future if they continue to do it. And borrowing power means we talk, I'm one of your team members, then I go out and then I say, we're doing this because Rob told me to do it. So they're borrowing the power from you in your position to make myself look more powerful. And I think borrowing power is a dangerous one because they never are doing it for the right reasons. They're never an educator or a teacher of why we're doing it. And then showing the people how. They're just swinging a bat with spikes on it. And I always say that. I was like, swing a bat to try to knock it out of the park with the team. But if you swing a bat with spikes on it, you're going to hurt a lot of people.
Yeah. It's funny you use that example because I've used a slightly different one, which is like, you can't use me as the sword. Like, I'm not the one where you're swinging me and I'm necessarily the fall guy. Not that I have a problem being the bad guy, so to speak, but to your point, it's that mentality of saying, I didn't make this decision. I'm forcing you to do it because so-and-so said so. And usually that right there is a very clear indicator that they're not bought in. And I had a leader early on in my career, and it took me a while to get there to understand it, where I actually felt he was pretty good. He said, look, when you can no longer publicly support the decisions being made by the company, it's time to leave. And sometimes we have to help people understand that and help them leave, but doesn't mean you have to agree with every decision. But if you can't publicly support it, understand the whys, get behind it, then it's not the right place for you. And those are the folks where, when I can see that, those are the ones that I move on the quickest.
Anybody else, like not individuals, I'm saying anybody else that is kind of I got to get rid of that leader right away.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I usually move on quickly is where I just see lack of productivity. Mm-hmm. They're wandering around, they're on their phone a lot. And it irks me, but I look at the impact on the rest of the team where other people are working really, really hard, hyper growth, everybody's busy. They see it. If you're seeing it, other people see it. And if you don't have the conversations early that address those productivity concerns, and they don't change, then you got to move on from those quick. Because otherwise you get just this air of complacency that sort of sets over the entire team. Because they're like, well, if they can go to the bathroom 20 times in a day, I guess I can go to the bathroom 20 times in the day. And all of a sudden no work gets done.
Yeah. The other one I would say is compartmentalizing. There are people that can't say, well, I have these things I'm dealing with in my personal life, and then I have to deal with these things in work. And they just kind of put it together, and everybody is living their life with them.
Yeah.
Right. Where the weight of what they're dealing with. I mean, you want to help each other as you're working, but if you have a leader that all of their problems are the company's problems now and their team's problems, I feel like that's never a recipe for a good outcome.
Well, it's funny you say that because I actually thought you were going to go a different direction when you talked about compartmentalizing. And I guess I'd probably use the word silo. Yeah. But when I see people try to control communication and not bring others in because they want to, that's their form of power is having the answer and being the person that everybody has to go to for a certain thing and not just being open. Those are also flags to me because we're one team. There's no reason we shouldn't be free flowing with information. And obviously there's things that are more confidential than others, but generally speaking, and this is even across like how Mo Bettahs works with Savory. Like there's no one on our team that should need to go through me to come talk to Savory because what's the point?
Yeah.
But the same thing, I want to see those dynamics on our team. So if there's somebody siloing communication and making them be the only person that can answer a question or deal with a certain thing, that's always a flag.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm bringing this up, I think leaders that will listen to this, because I know that many will, give them some ideas of what to look for. Because sometimes it's happening, but then when another leader is like, I'm terminating people or getting them out of the team.
Yeah.
When they're doing these things, it gives them an idea of like, what should I be looking for that could be hurting me? And a lot of times there's leaders where they're close to you as a leader, right? So you take John Conine, for instance. Yep. John's amazing, not just because he's a good leader to you, right? And for you, but if you're not in the room, he's a great representative for Mo Bettahs at all times, in every case, in every room, in every conversation, always. That's why he's a great vice president of operations.
For sure. I have zero question or concern if he's having a conversation without me present, what's coming out of his mouth.
That's right.
I know he's aligned. I know he's bought in. I know he and I, unfortunately, we probably spend too much time together where we both talk the same language at this point. But yeah, you're right. It's looking out for those other indicators. And look, I think as you get better and better and you understand your culture, you have less and less of those folks that you always have to keep an eye out, but less and less of those folks you have to worry about, just because you can find the right questions and the demeanor and the vibe as you interview people and say, okay, this is a good fit for the culture of the company. Now let's go look at your resume and see if you've got the skills. But if I lean heavy on culture and who they are as a human, I tend to find I have more success than getting enamored by a resume or work experience or what they've done in a prior life.
Yeah, and I'm not just, we keep talking about John because John's amazing, but there's a lot of people in the organization that work just with John as well, within the team, and all the field ops people and the regionals and the DMs, and they're all amazing. And there's been a lot of them that have been with the company 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Just goes to show if you have a good culture of leadership and support for one another, that people will stay around. People always think that this industry, that there's this revolving door. It can be. There's some businesses that have 350% turnover a year at all levels of the business.
Yep.
You have been able to beat the odds of that because you have people that have been there for years and years and years, and you're less than 100% in the stores as well. I think you guys are 60 something, aren't you? Or something low.
Yeah. No, it's pretty low overall. And I think the big piece of that is folks like John. We have a lot of tenure on the team, but they're extreme. I've never been welcomed onto a team as quickly as I was welcomed on with the Mo Bettahs team. And I've seen that carry through. Like Katrina Guevara, our head of marketing, she's been with us for a while now.
She's awesome.
Oh, and I say a while, under 2 years, but you wouldn't know it. Like she's not treated differently for having, 2 years of tenure compared to John, who's got 13 years of tenure, or David Greenwood, who's our amazing head of real estate and development.
He's incredible.
He's about to hit his year. You would think he's been here for 10 years. And a incredible leader, but then to also see how the team has welcomed those folks on and taught them about our culture and helped educate them is a big piece of how this all works. So again, that's why I say it's definitely not all me. The team that brings others in, starting with Kimo and Kalani, John, Zach, all these folks, I could keep naming names that have been welcoming. And so I think if you're a company that has a culture that distrusts new people coming on board, you're going to have a tough time building what we've been able to build. And sadly, I can tell you, I've joined those teams. I know what that looks like, and that's not something we're going to allow or have.
Yeah, here. I've heard that too. So a lot of times when people build great teams or they have a great culture, it's because several of those parties have been at bad cultures. They've seen how not to act, how not to build a team, and then they come and they lean into building a great team because everybody wants to work for a great company, great culture, great environment. And what did you say? I have all the stations set up so that when you're running the marathon, you can get your drink, you know where the finish line is, and you can reach out and grab the opportunity. As far as a growing culture and a growing business, you have this corporate office is growing too, right? Every business, as you add more and more people at the top, I think that there's this feeling from people that are out in the field that we're on an island. It's me as a GM or me as assistant GM or me as a team member, and the corporate office is what everybody calls it. Corporate office is in a different state. Headquarters. It sounds so ivory tower-ish. Yep. How have you been able to foster a strong relationship with the field, all of the stores, all of the appendages that we have to your corporate headquarters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, and I know the team gets a little annoyed with me because I'm very direct with this, is we're the support team. We're the support center and we're the support team. We're not HQ. We're not headquarters. We're not home office. We're not whatever other term you want to use. We only exist because of what happens in our restaurants. And we have to always keep that in perspective. And so I'm pretty maniacal about that verbiage and protective of it, because I do think it's a mindset. It's just words at the end of the day, but words matter. And so that's important. But then it's all these other touch points I mentioned. We welcome, in fact, we just did a promotion for Valentine's Day that was buy one, get one regular plate. A regular plate is the most popular item that we have. But you think when we put out a promotion like that, we're serving a lot of plates. I think the average restaurant did like 160 extra plates that one day. But we encouraged our teams to be out and be in the restaurants and be working that day. I was up in Idaho. I know we had John was out in Kansas City. We had our human resources team that was out in restaurants here in Utah. But we try to get out into the field and not only ask of them a lot by doing a promotion like that, but we ask a lot of them of a support team to be out and say, hey, this is our time to show up for them. And so we do it in that way. As a lot of folks will work out of the restaurants, but just trying to find the most seamless way possible to interact and engage with the teams. And I'd say the other thing too is, and there's going to be a time where we have to filter communication a little bit more, just because otherwise you can have so many people at the support center, support team that are bombarding restaurants with communication. But we try to create direct channels at this point where it's like, hey, you've got a payroll question, reach out to the person in charge of payroll. You've got an accounting question, go straight to them. Everything doesn't have to funnel through our district managers and our director of ops and this like chain of command. There are ways that we like that in some ways, but in other ways, it's like, hey, we're all part of the same team. In fact, I tell people often they love to use the term higher ups or the CEO. And I'm like, yeah, hey, there's actually no one really higher up. Like, I'm Rob. This is my name. You now know me, John, Katrina, David. Like, we try to eliminate that verbiage too, where that ivory tower idea, like you've got these folks up on a pedestal. It's like, no, knock out the pedestal. We're humans. This is who we are. If there's a decision in the company you don't like, I've got nobody else to blame but me. So you know who to come and running after. And we just try to be very transparent about that.
Yeah, I love the whole higher up statement because I've always hated that terminology. And I think that when you're a leader, people want to be leaders so bad, right, Rob? And then they get to be a leader and you're like, holy cow, the weight of this now too. And I think that they don't realize the weight of it is because a lot of leaders think before you get there that it's this pyramid and that you're at the top of the pyramid as the CEO or as a VP or as a director, and then you have the bottom of the pyramid reporting up to you. So that's why they say higher ups.
Yeah.
And I've always told leaders that work with me or alongside me it's actually the inverse, right? The pyramid's on top of your head. That's why you feel all this weight and pressure from the world on you when you're a true leader and you're acting like a true leader because you're supporting it all.
Yeah.
So when they say higher ups, like actually, I'm Andrew, I'm Rob, and we're just like you guys. We're just doing a different type of job, and it's all up to you guys to really carry the organization, and I'm carrying you.
Well, and I think to that point, I mean, as a leader, there's a book that I love to read. It's John Maxwell, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and he's got a law in there called the law of sacrifice. And I think a lot of leaders miss this. They think, oh, I've moved up this pyramid, as you pointed out. Things get easier. I'm going to go hang out at the golf course every day. I just have a few meetings, and everybody else does something. And the law of sacrifice is you give up to go up, and you have to realize, like, there's different stresses that come with the decisions you have to make. There's, you might call me at 8:00 at night, and I'm not gonna be like, Andrew, the day ended at 5.
Yeah, I'm golfing right now.
Right? Like, there's different things in there, but I think as a mindset, as a leader, you have to remember, like, I have different priorities for the team. I need to be there for the team, and it is that inverted pyramid because I'm here to support everybody. And that means I have to give up maybe some freedoms or some liberties around a schedule or different decision-making to be in that position. And if you don't own that, you're not going to be very successful as a leader.
The one thing I want to talk about leadership and the pressure of, and I would say anybody that's listening to this, if you are a leader, and I can say this because this is our podcast, if you're a leader that thinks being a leader is going to the golf club and golfing during the day and being a figurehead and an image of power, but you're not willing to actually do the work that everybody around you is doing, shame on you. I mean, shame on you. You shouldn't even be a leader. And
you're actually not a leader at that point.
You're not a leader.
You might have a title and a position, but either A, you've got the money that you're not going to lose it anytime soon, or B, you're not going to be in that position for very long because that's not what leadership is about.
And your team, if you really sat them down and asked them, they don't respect you. If you're not present as a leader, if you're not willing to work as hard as everybody around you or harder, it's just not going to last very long. I have been asked several times, like, what does it feel like to be, an entrepreneur, or to own your own company, or to be the CEO or whatever? I'm like, it's tiring. It's hard because it is never ending. It never sleeps. It never turns off. I feel the pressure every minute of every day. Yeah. And I know you do too. I like that you said, I was excited at 3:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep anymore because of all the great things I have to do. But how many people are waking up at 3:30 in the morning going, wow, I have a lot of things to do today. I'm excited. Not too many, because people are like, oh my gosh, I have to go to work. You got to love what you do, right?
You absolutely have to love what you do. In fact, when I was leaving a position and I was giving my notice at that position, they were questioning me why I was doing it. And it was actually to come here. And I flat out said, I need to wake up every morning excited about what I'm doing, and I'm not here. And I think I can do that there. And you're right. There's a lot of pressure and a lot of things that happen, and it's busy, but I love it. With all of that, the brand's amazing. The people I get to work with are amazing. And that fuels me to keep going. And so are there long days that come with that? Sure. Are there frustrating days that happen? Sure. But I know tomorrow's going to be a great one.
Yeah, I like what you just said too, is you gotta have a company that has a great product. You said that earlier on. You gotta have great founders. But if you really distill it down to what makes a great opportunity or a great business, that is that you're excited to work with the people you're working with every day, right?
Yeah.
I just think about the team that I have, and I actually get excited to see them. If I'm out of the office too long for a business travel or for meetings or whatever, I'm excited to come back to the office and then reconnect.
Yep.
And if you don't have a culture or a team like that, you need to build one, because work is too hard, life is too short, things move too fast. You have to enjoy it, and you've got to have a good team around you.
Agreed.
So, all right. So I want to talk about meeting cadence lastly too. So with a leadership team that you have that's out in the field and then you have inside the office, do you meet with your team in the office, give orders, and then have them go and disseminate? Or do you have the meetings in the office and then you pull everybody in the field into that? You said a couple times a year you guys meet in person, which I think is worth every dollar, right? Like, you have to invest into culture.
Yep.
And investing into culture is not throwing gifts at them or sending them on trips necessarily, which I know a lot of companies do. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily bad. It just can't be that. Culture does not get created by throwing gifts and showering them with trips. It's by being together and having that in-person contact.
Yep.
But how often do you have meetings within Mo Bettahs to keep this engine that's running so fast going?
Yeah. Well, first, I don't like to think of it as a meeting to give out and dole out orders. At the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision. So don't get it wrong. I don't believe in leading through consensus. I don't think that works. But our meetings are intended to be collaborative, intended to share ideas and change direction. And it probably doesn't always feel that way, because I can be a pretty strong, opinionated person.
You can? No way.
Just sometimes. But I do try to challenge the team, like, hey, I want your input. And if there's no idea, then we're probably going to go with my idea, because we have to solve this problem. But I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, so somebody else give me a better idea. But we meet, so my immediate leadership team, we meet every single week. Kimo Kalani joined those meetings to keep us true to the culture. We kick those meetings off with, we call it Stories of Aloha, but it connects back to who we are as our culture and good stuff that's happening out in, whether it's in the restaurants or in the office or wherever it be, good things that happen. So every meeting kicks off that way. But we meet with the leadership team, we align on the priorities for the week, and then that starts to disseminate out. And so, John with his team meets with his directors. I actually meet with them every single week as well, because I want to stay close to the business and what's going on. So he has his own meeting with them and one-on-ones, and I meet with them. And then the directors meet with their districts. I can join those meetings too. I try not to all the time, because otherwise, again, I don't keep my mouth shut and I take over. So I try to give them the space, but they meet with their teams, and then the district managers meet with their GMs. And so it does kind of cascade down, but in this very fluid virtual, let's get on Teams or Zoom, whatever your choice is, and meet that way. But then the other thing we push really heavy is one-on-ones every week. And so you have these group meetings. Group meetings can be an easy place to like pound your fist on the table and demand this, but you're not really talking to someone specifically. No. And so I think it's important to have one-on-one, say, okay, so we talked about this. Now let's talk about your specific role and responsibility and whatever this thing is we're doing. And by the way, with your role and responsibility, what do you need from me to make it happen? And let's have that one-on-one dialogue outside of the group dialogue. So we have these regular cadence of meetings every single week. One-on-ones happen every single week with these groups, and we collaborate.
That's crazy. Every week.
Yeah.
We've instituted one-on-ones also at Savory in our corporate office, and we're doing them once a month, every 2 months. And before, when we were not doing it that often, we were doing it once a year, which I think most companies try to do. It's unbelievable how much you find out about if the person's on task, off task, on point with what they're trying to do, happy, not happy, teams working well or not, if you have them that often.
Yeah. And by the way, they don't have to be that long. Most of my one-on-ones are they're 30 minutes, and sometimes, quite frankly, they go 15 or 20. It's like, okay, we're
good.
We've caught up. Maybe we've caught up in the hallway, or we've done something else. And but it can be short and quick, but it is that chance even to connect on the personal level and understand just where they are, and are they having things going on in their life that might be impacting other things that are happening in the office, and you can collaborate and align around those things as well. So I think that connection is important. And I don't want to make it sound like you got to over meeting everything. Like,
no,
I set specific days that we do these things on. And then for me, it's mostly Mondays and Tuesdays are quote unquote meeting and one-on-one days. And then Wednesday through Friday is let's hopefully get out in the field and visit the restaurants, or, maybe there's some specific project things we've got to circle.
Yeah. One-on-one meeting sounds like you're over meeting yourself as a business. It's not what it is. It's connect with your people, make sure it's not a bunch of other voices in the room so that they can truly open up and that there can be that connection. And I think there's so much power in that. It's been great for us. It's been great for our teams as well. Impressed that you do it that often.
And even how you set it up. I mean, it's really important to me. Like, the team shares their notes with me ahead of time. Just like, by the way, I meet with Shauna every week, and Shauna, I don't think she's never asked me for this, but I always send her a list of notes and things I want to talk about, mostly to organize my thoughts. It's more helpful for me, but then we can have a really good dialogue. That's the same thing we try to do with our team as well, to make sure these are productive and quick sessions, not let's just sit and rap for, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then wonder what happened to the rest of the day.
So one of the last questions I have, and then we're going to do a couple of rapid fire questions, but as a leader, there's always this word that we all know we have to have as a leader. It's hard to do, but it's called humility. As a leader, you think, well, I'm the leader. I have to show strength, power of decision-making. I have to be the tip of the spear, and everybody has to follow. I'm going to pound my hand on the table every once in a while, right? Now, there's a time for that occasionally, right? To get people to wake up a little bit to what we're really trying to accomplish, or if we get off track, to get everybody back on track. But if you do that too often, you're going to look like a jackass. But humility is one of the hardest attributes or traits to have as a leader. If you see someone that's a great leader, but they're not humble, have you ever been able to unlock how to help someone become more humble as a leader, I'm saying?
Yeah. I think most of the time it's by leading through example and showing them, right? It's silly little things like we just moved into a new office. It would not have been uncommon to see me under my desk doing my own cables and maybe building a piece of furniture that was going to go in there and showing them like no one needs to be here to serve me. There might've been things that we did as we moved into that office that I need somebody with more technical ability than me to mount something on a wall or do it. But we're not above anything. In fact, one of my stories that I've shared about Shauna is we were in, I think it was Vegas or somewhere, but we were meeting with a new broker, and David, our head of real estate, was sharing with this broker who Shauna was. And there's Shauna out in the parking lot taking out trash. And he looked at David and said, "That's Shauna, and she's taking out the trash." I was like, yeah, none of us are above any of that. And so, not that most of Shauna's time should be spent taking out the trash, or my time for that matter, but I think leading through example and showing leaders that none of us are above anything on these tasks. And there are experts that should be doing certain things versus others, but it's not because we're too good for it.
Yeah. And I think as a leader too, don't hear that and then go find opportunities to say, I'm going to go take out the trash so people can see me take out the trash. That's not humility. That's not showing by example.
It has to be genuine.
It's got to be genuine. And that thing about Shauna or any of our team members is if we walk in one of our restaurants, it doesn't matter which restaurant it is, if we see tables that are not clean, if we see garbage that needs to be taken out, if there's a customer that's standing there that's frustrated, we jump in, we act.
Totally.
And there's been times where I'm so humble, when I say this. No, but there's times that I've been there that there's a light that's above this section that's out. Well, I went and got the ladder, went up at the top, and I tried to figure out how to fix it. And we got the electricity back to it. And I remember looking down and a couple of people recording me doing it. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, we're recording that you're up on a ladder fixing that light. And I thought, because it's my restaurant and the light's out and I'm just normal is why I'm fixing it.
Totally.
It shouldn't be a show.
Yeah, you're not doing it for show whatsoever. And I think, but this is why we have a new CFO actually starting with the brand next week. Other than the first 2 days of meeting everybody, he's going to spend 3 days in the stores and learning that. And for me, it's important because when I go into restaurants, much to your point, if the store's getting hammered, like I'm going to jump in and start I'm going to start serving customers and not stand in the corner. And I've been in many of those where the CEO or the VP or whoever's standing in the corner with their arms folded. Like, no, we're going to jump in and help. At the end of it, we're going to debrief and figure out how we got there. And is there things we could do to prevent it? It's not just I'm the hero of the day and I walk away, but it's important to me to show the team like, hey, you're under duress right now. I'm not above this. Like, I'm not just going to stare and point and tell you guys all need to be better. Like, we're going to jump in and help, and then we'll figure out how we're going to get better in the future.
Yeah, it's so good. Okay, so to end here, I want to ask you a couple questions, and if you have to pause and just think, it's okay, because this is a podcast and we can manipulate anything.
Beautiful.
I'm just kidding. What are your learnings from the last 25 years of your career to this point now, even with your Mo Bettahs learnings? What would you tell someone about just being a leader and how to be a better leader? What are your learnings?
I mean, first and foremost, being humble is important. You don't earn status. You don't earn the right to demand people serve you, or, I land in a market and I better have this specific beverage in my cup holder when I get here. Like, be humble and understand we're all humans and we can take care of ourselves. And so I think that's one. I think the other one, and we touched on it a lot, is hold on to culture. Define what your culture is. Mo Bettah's culture is unique. A lot of what we talked about is part of our culture. It's not the right culture for every business, and that's okay. Define your culture, and then you've got to be maniacal about that. Bring people on board that are aligned with that culture and what you're trying to be. And don't bend just because of talent or a resume or somebody graduated from Harvard or wherever it is. Like, culture matters. Hold on to that. And also just never lose the flame. If you're not enjoying what you're doing as a leader, it is time to move on, because the team's going to feel that. They're going to read it and they're going to feed off of you. And if you're not amped and excited to get up to work every day and be pushing for more and be pushing to grow, then you're probably going to start to see the curve of your business go from a nice trajectory to
that's right,
to the downward side.
And I like what you said earlier about that. Is like, it's okay. If you're done, if you don't have the flame, it's okay. Go find something that you're going to be excited about. Life's Absolutely. Too short. Okay. What would you change?
What would I change about me or about the career? What
would you change?
What would I change?
Everybody always is asked, like, if you were to go back, what would you change? Or would you say, I'm right where I wanted to be and all is well?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I would change it. I wouldn't be where I am if I changed anything. And I am absolutely where I want to be and love what I'm doing and love who I'm doing it with. And so are there experiences I probably would love to have not gone through in my life? Sure. But I probably wouldn't be here if I changed those things.
All right. Good answer. And if we're at Mo Bettahs, what are you eating?
What am I eating? Right now, I am definitely eating, we have a new spicy chicken plate, we call it. It's teriyaki chicken and katsu chicken. And we have this spicy mayo and this yobo sauce. I love spicy food, and you want some heat and some delicious Hawaiian food like that.
That's the best combo.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And you got to drizzle on the katsu. You got to drizzle both. You drizzle the spicy mayo and the yobo. Shout out to Kimo, because he's the one who first introduced us to this. It can't be beat. I'm sure I'll tire of it at some point and I'll just move on to musubi or something else. But right now it's that katsu drizzled in that, and then teriyaki just makes me feel better that I'm not putting all this fried chicken in my belly. But.
Okay, and I would say that all that's great. The yobo sauce is one of my favorite. I know it's Shauna's favorite too, but good job on that. And then if you're not eating at Mo Bettahs, where are you eating? Like, where are you going to go if you're not going to eat at Mo Bettahs? Because believe it or not, when we own restaurants, we don't only eat at those restaurants. It's so many times people will walk up to me and they're like, why are you eating here? Don't you always have to eat at your restaurants? I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I like a lot of different places.
I mean, I love good barbecue. So like, shout out to R&R, like love R&R. We go visit them. But honestly, as you know, I didn't choose an easy commute for myself moving here to Utah. So I
drive an hour a day.
I drive over an hour a day. And so if I'm not eating at Mo Bettahs, I'm usually cooking something at home. We like to smoke a good brisket or do some smash burgers or things like that. So a lot of it's done there. But if I'm out and about, love a good kava bowl.
Kava's a good bowl.
The team.
Shout out to Brett. Good job.
I know. Kimo and Kalani, when I first told them we were going to go to kava, they're like, Mediterranean, what the world is that? And now, without fail, when we're out in the market, they get that. And then Houston's hot chicken. I think everybody, myself and the team, is pretty hooked on hot chicken.
Yeah, that's good. Well. All right. So I'm going to end on saying one thing. So I'm wearing this sweatshirt. You got me this sweatshirt. And the sweatshirt has the shaka on it, and it has good shit, right?
Yep.
Tell me about what the sweatshirt is, because I feel honored to have it. I thought when I got it, it was just like, hey, Andrew, there's like a new sweatshirt that we have in the business.
Yeah.
I thought we would end just on this because of how people are just like dying to have one. And I didn't know that I actually was in some club that had one, but I feel honored to have one.
Yeah.
It's my favorite sweatshirt too, but that's why I'm wearing it today. Tell us about this sweatshirt.
Well, I think you got to look for moments where you can grab onto something pretty cool. And shout out to Tyler Nelson on this one. We were sitting reviewing some results, and in the middle of the meeting, he just stopped and threw up the shotgun. Well, that was some good shit. And I don't know why, both he and I kind of looked at each other and were like, there's something to that. And then magically the bone shaka came out of it. And so what that hoodie, and we have some variations of those now, but we use that is when we do see people doing some really impressive above and beyond stuff, usually linked to our values or our culture. Those aren't something you can buy. Those aren't something that are handed out lightly. I mentioned we start off every meeting with stories of aloha. Often those stories of aloha turn into something that's pretty impressive, where we'll recognize someone with a good shit hoodie. And I mean, we've had stories where somebody literally gave a customer the Heimlich in the lobby, saved their life, and then went right back to taking a catering order. We're like, I don't even know how you stayed composed and helping the business, keeping a customer going. Of course, they got the hoodie, and it doesn't always have to be that dramatic though. It can also just, we've had instances where a team member's taking care of another team member in some unique or special way. Or we had a team member recently who had to leave the country, because their visa had expired. But we had a group of folks at the support center that just got them a little like goodbye package gift. And so it was cool for them to see the moment that they created for this employee that had to leave. Those folks ended up getting a hoodie for recognizing that. And so we look for those moments. And if you're wearing one of those, that it came from usually either myself or John, and you had to have done something to earn that hoodie.
It's awesome. Well, I don't know what I did, so I'm going to keep working really hard to deserve this. But I am proud of owning one, and I think it's just another example of how you're a great leader. If I were to go back and change anything, I would go back and join a team where you're the leader and you're my CEO. So I appreciate you joining us here today, sharing a lot of your insights to the teams that are listening to this out there. And I would just say, if anything, take one or two things from this and implement it tomorrow, because there was some good nuggets here today. So thank you, Rob.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Andrew.